Surprising loss against Portugal means there is so much for us to talk about when it comes to U.S. women's soccer. First thing I noticed tactically, long kickoffs, all the rage right now, but Emma Hayes opting not to do that today. What could be the rationale behind that? In this instance, what we're seeing, trying to draw Portugal really high up the pitch, then they're going to launch that long ball with the pop-on header. This is the play that we typically see on kickoff. So why are they doing this? They're trying to create space in behind Portugal. They know they have fast players. They know they have good runners. They want to get into that space. Very lucky put that goal in the back of the net this early on in the match. Here's the thing, was it really that great of the sequence? I don't think so. I think they're just catching Portugal a little bit off guard early in the match. This is not the first time we've seen this type of play from the U.S. early into a match. It's a fair bit of standing around there. Rose Lavelle is, I think, offside. The best part of this is Lavelle's two-touch and turn to get the shot off so quickly, but outside of that, this leaves a lot to be desired. Meanwhile, what we see from Portugal is a team that looks really comfortable passing. It's an ambitious pass there, but they go to challenge that ball first, win that. Good for them. They're now going to pass into a really threatening area, but they don't like the look that they have. So they're going to just maintain possession of the ball and pass into nice, safe areas. And the problem for the U.S. here is it is far too comfortable for Portugal to get into good spots and retain possession. So similar thing there, we have a bad touch and then far too comfortable getting into a good position. Patterson's going to do a great job to keep her player wide, but again, allowed to possess, allowed to push back, allowed to push into new positions. Better job by the midfield to generate a turnover, but this is where we're going to start to see what the problem is. The U.S. now looking very hurried, or not in, lockstep. Players are rushing, and the ball does not remain in play. That breaks up their momentum. Here's another example. Good turnover in the midfield. Rush into a transitional chance, a little bit of an offside, people out of step, like chemistry's not there. But the bigger issue, that shot means possession is now turned over. So the U.S. had possession for about 5 seconds. It was pretty wasteful. That's problem number one for the U.S. They're not retaining possession for long enough. The second problem is when they have opportunities to retain possession, like this one here is a good second opportunity after that cross. Nobody's really hustling to get into, I think, a better attacking position, and it forces a pretty poor shot compared to Portugal. That's a really nice tackle there, and they look like they're going very quickly on this transitional opportunity, but the difference to me is they do not look hurried. They're going fast, but not rushed, and that to me is because they are far more intense on both sides of the ball, that they're just able to offer that same intensity once their defense makes a tackle. This is Portugal's first corner, and to my eye, they used the same setup for every corner, and they just placed the ball in a different location. But here's one of the first issues for the U.S. They could not maintain possession and defend. They had to just clear this wildly up the pitch, broke up any sort of momentum they may have had. So the U.S. may be ahead in this match, but early on, it's Portugal that are really looking dominant to me. Like the U.S. midfield is just looking lost a lot of the time. The spacing for this press here is not good. Portugal are just having a really easy time moving the ball around. We're going to see Cooper on the wing here look a little bit confused about what she's supposed to be doing. And then Lavelle looks a little bit confused about what she's supposed to be doing. And again, it's like she's there, but is she even pressing? This whole press just felt really weak, and Portugal just did not seem challenged. The other thing, my goodness, the offsides, like the chemistry was not there at all. This flag, this poor AR was working so hard. It wasn't until about 25 minutes in where we had the sequence when I felt like we could finally see the U.S. move in the manner in which they wanted to. I think this looked like the plan of attack that they had. So we're going to see Thompson goes wide, Patterson comes inside, Horan was staying behind Patterson a little bit for support. Now, Alyssa Thompson, that's the fast, speedy player. That's the player you want going one-on-one. Doesn't get the look she likes. Patterson, very central now. This, to me, starts feeling like, okay, this is the plan. They're going to recycle the ball here, retain possession. Again, that's always going to be the U.S.'s plan. But some of the little, creativity, the construction, those links just still were not there in the final third, even when the U.S. started looking a little bit better. Here's another sequence that looked a bit more planned to my eye. We're going to see the U.S. be pretty patient here on the build-out, really try and draw Portugal in even further. We see Horan drop low. That's part of that. And then we're just going to execute the exact same ball, long ball, pop on header, trying to create plenty of space in behind to get your fastest player. The thing is, it's just still not working, and they're at least retaining possession, but they just cannot get going. Portugal are also very capable of repeating sequences. This is basically like the first sequence we saw out of them from sort of 3 minutes in, where they are really competitive once that ball is bouncing around, and it's forcing the U.S. into bad clearances. Look at the U.S. here. No one looks ready. No one looks even remotely prepared. Portugal are just... I mean, that it's just awful. It's awful. I'm sorry, I gotta go back. Like, how do we just have someone sitting in here between 3 players and then just turning like it's nothing into an even scarier area of the pitch? And then it's just so bad. The U.S. looks so reactive on defense and not preventative at all. And that's not all that's going wrong for the U.S. They're now starting to really struggle to escape the press. They weren't doing such a bad job of this earlier, but I mean, Portugal has sensed the blood in the water, and they're out there now. Again, midfield, again, allowing passes into dangerous areas, and again, being allowed to possess a ball and recycle it when they really shouldn't be. It's just tough to watch because Portugal could just sense that all of these balls, anytime it was loose, anytime it was going to bounce, that there was a really good chance that we could win that ball. And it was just willing them into some crazy things. This is just an awkward bounce in the midfield, awkwardly allowed to pass to someone wide open. It's just not good enough at all. The best part of this entire sequence is this great save from Fallon, who, by the way, looks not happy with her defense at all, as she should not. Good communication out of her. She looks ready, got her defense set. That's great stuff. Here's where we start having problems. Almost all of these players are matched up in man coverage. So man coverage, man coverage, man coverage, man coverage, man coverage. We have 3 zone players, 1, 2 center backs on the outside of the post, and then 1 centrally. Heaps, may actually also be in man coverage, just sneakily watching from there. I'm not really sure. But point is, we have Patterson on 17 and we have Coffee on 19. And I think that's kind of where the mix-up and the struggle is. Really try and follow Coffee, watching her player. So she's going to wriggle past another Portuguese player, which kind of creates a little bit of confusion in trying to match up in that man-for-man. When you watch Coffee on the replay, she almost kind of misses when the ball comes off. And you have to prioritize looking at the mark first, but she almost seems a little bit surprised that the ball is released and this is a little bit late. It's unfortunate, but again, it's not good enough, right? Like, you've got to be first to the ball. There's plenty of people in the way there. I get that it's confusing, but from that angle, you can see it's just, job is not done. That's what goes wrong here. A job is not done. Now, the U.S. did make tactical changes and switch up their formation about 30 minutes into this match, but they still looked lost even after that change. And I don't think you could really see what they were trying to change until halftime. The press, to me, does not look any more aggressive. It just looks more purposeful. That was a much better win. Look at the spacing here between the players as they're attacking. It's way more even. I think they do a much better job at finding the open player, switching the point of attack. And I think, the off-ball movement here and support is much better. U.S. getting into more central areas, distributing better, and I think just the whole opportunity created there, way higher quality than anything we saw in the first half. Here's another look at some of the improvements in midfield. We see this aerial duel finally won. I mean, not much of a duel, but it was a big point of contention in the first half. So it's good to see the U.S. winning those. Good to see them using that left. That's clearly a plan of attack, but the problems start creeping in again here. Portugal very happy to put the ball out of play and kill the U.S.'s momentum. That tactic has been used very successfully against them in the past. Japan, maybe the first to kind of figure that out. And now we start seeing more problems creep back in. Press escape on this right-hand side is a struggle. Starts looking a lot better on the left-hand side because the U.S. have pushed Avery Patterson up to create that space. They're able to do a bit of what they want to do here on the left side, but the issues start creeping back in. Players looking surprised to receive the ball. Players not able to send in quality balls. All those problems just start bubbling up again. We only got like 5 minutes of good play. The other thing I didn't like to see, it got to a point where it kind of felt like the U.S. weren't really creating opportunities. They were just capitalizing on Portuguese mistakes. Like, this is one of their better chances in the game. Somebody in a very advanced, dangerous position, ball almost goes across the line there. Really doesn't have that much to do with the U.S. This one is a little bit better. And again, look how central Avery Patterson is. It's clearly part of the plan, but that timing, that connection is just not there. So I talked in my earlier video about chemistry. Can you boost some of that chemistry by just bringing a bunch of players from different teams? And, that's not the answer that Emma Hayes went with. And for good reason, right? This chemistry needs to develop. It looked bad. The time off clearly had hurt the team, and it was time for Kat McCrary to go sit on the bench and think about what she'd done. Emma Hayes has plenty of young players that she wanted to give opportunities, and this is a big sub window with 4 players changing out here. This team did not immediately look better. It's to be expected when you're going to swap out almost half the players on a pitch. It takes a little bit of time to find their footing. But one of the issues that did really start creeping back in around this time was aerial clearances. They started to really become an issue towards the end of the game, and it put the defense in some difficult spots. And here's where things start getting really problematic for the U.S. If they hadn't prepared for Portugal to come out in a 4-4-2 diamond, I think they probably hadn't prepared for their best player to sit for this match. And as soon as Portuguese head coach senses that there's some weakness in switching out half the team, he very cleverly sends on probably their best player. This is going to create probably a little bit of tension, a little bit of fear in the U.S. team, who have probably done a little bit of studying on this player. So rightly so, they're just going to push a ball out of bounds there and not want to deal with that. Same thing here. Let's just push the ball out of bounds so we don't have to deal with this very scary player. And then this brings us to a very important inflection point. It's another corner. Tullis Joyce looking in control there. We've got the pile of man marking going on again. Ball's going to get served into a different point, but guess what? It's allowed to drop on the ground in the box. It should never happen. Portuguese players should not be able to play that with their feet. Now, the one-on-one, I'm pretty sure that is Rose Lavelle that has that mark there. Looks pretty similar to what happens to Coffey earlier, and that, she just gets beat on the release and can never really recover into a good spot. It's unfortunate, it sucks, but these are really, really hard things to practice and prepare for, and you want these mistakes to happen now. I know somebody that probably has a lot of feelings about this one.
Do you know you guys have conceded 8 goals this year, 4 off set pieces, corners to be exact?
Yeah.
That's horrific.
I spoke to head coach Emma Hayes, and her first reaction was just horrific, is exactly what she said. She said,
This is what it means to be a footballer. You have coaches living in your head rent-free for the entire rest of your life. Now, I think around 75 minutes, this is where we see this new group start to settle, and things start looking a lot better. I'm sure it helps that Portugal is tired, but the U.S. at this point just seemed to have a little bit of a better handle on things. Look how much more dynamic this movement is. Again, I think the spacing is better. They're occupying better areas of the pitch. They're recycling better. Problem is, they're just still not quite able to get things done here. Patience is better too. Let's give them some claps for that. Better opportunity, better setup. Again, frustrating result, but it's all getting there. It's starting to look better. U.S. have time for another sub, so we're going to see Lavelle come out, Shaw go in. I thought this was a good change because a lot of the intensity was gone from Lavelle's game, and Shaw just brought that back instantly, looking like a nice connection point, but U.S. just still struggling to string multiple things together. Also still really struggling with that loss of momentum that comes by the ball being put out of play. In Portugal, we're just very happy to play that way. Things looking a little bit better in the midfield, but it's still just choppy. It felt like getting pressure to the ball was still a little bit, it was like 50-50 whether it was going to happen and really have the intensity there, and then like 50-50 if it was going to be a foul. I do think a lot of these offensive chances started looking better. Like, I love that dummy there from Shaw. I thought this was a really nice combination play. It's just unfortunate. Things are still not going the U.S.'s way. Another throw, again, just stopping and starting, killing them. And this is a seesaw of performance here where that aerial clearance doesn't go well. And now there's another poor clearance. So it's like things start looking up on the offensive side, but it's just instantly down defensively. And I know this was offside, but it just was not a good look. It was not a good position to be in, and the U.S. just were lacking consistency. I have to imagine this is an especially tough loss for the U.S. because there's just not one thing they can point to as being wrong, right? The aerial duels were bad. Pressure on the ball was bad. Possession was not great. Quality of shots generated was not great. And individual players need to be allowed to have moments where they make mistakes and learn and grow from those. But when the team collectively is functioning this poorly, it doesn't leave a lot of room for individuals to have a bad moment or make a bad decision. So I really felt for this team because things did get better, but Emma Hayes called it whack-a-mole in her interview, and that's just exactly what it felt like. One thing would get better, something else would trade off, and they just never really fully got going. Some of the best opportunities were right at the end of this match, and would have loved to see them tie it up here to at least, feel like some reward for improving their play over a match, but it just was not it. It was not there. This is what happens when we haven't played together a long time, and I really look forward to seeing what they're going to change next match because there is so much to work on. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you for the next one.